Well, good evening. Thanks for coming. Let's all stand, shall we? I'd like to have everyone move forward 3 benches. Okay? Move forward 3 benches. Everyone? We like close fellowship. Really appreciate it. Just stay standing and we'll pray together then. It's been a very busy weekend, and it was hard to get here tonight. I'm sure for some people it's been a very, very busy weekend for a lot of people. But anyway, we'll have a good evening. All right. I know some are sick tonight at home, but let's pray. Father, we thank you this evening again for your presence here. And Lord, we just pray your blessing upon this service. We thank you for the Ohio Wilderness Boys Camp and the work that they are doing. And we thank you for all these who support the work. And Father, I just thank you for the lives you are changing there, even today. And I pray blessing upon Brother Joe as he shares this evening. And give us a vision of how you're building your kingdom at the Boys Camp. And Lord, bless those who have come out tonight. Give us a good evening. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, you may be seated. All right. I guess Chief Joe, I call him Chief Joe. He's the director of the Boys Camp, and he's in charge tonight. Brother Joe, thank you.
I might get you to come 4 benches forward, because I think this is all the technology we've got is right here. I don't think they can get it up on the screens tonight. So I'm not sure if we should. Do you want to come on down a little closer? And I'll turn this around where you can see it. It's a small screen, and you're actually going to be the first ones to see this new slideshow. Is this wireless or is there a cord underneath this thing?
There's a cord there, yeah.
So I just can't do that now?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you come forward? Yeah, front bench.
Now I understand that there are actually 2 churches here. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Parts of 2 churches.
Hartville conservative people?
Yes.
Pleasant View people?
Yeah.
Wow.
And you're in the same building?
For a little bit.
Does our nation need to see a good example of people who are a little bit different, that don't have to yell and scream at each other? Yeah. Well, I'm glad you all came. Now I can't see it, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, he's going to get me all fixed up. He's going to get his cord twisted back right.
He has all the answers.
Oh, do you have a cord? We're missing an HDMI cord, I guess. Okay. Talk to the AV guys. Do you want someone to go get an HDMI cord? All right. How many of you have seen a camp presentation before? Most. I've been doing the same camp presentation for years. And I decided, you know what, we need something new. Because you know about camp, mostly, so we'll review that lightly. But I want to get into what's going on now, what have we been doing the last 2 or 3 years, what's exciting, and what are we looking forward to here in the coming years. All right, so why do we need camp? America is #1 in the world for fatherless homes. Yeah. 1/3 of the children in the U.S. do not have access to their biological father. Why do we need camp? Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless. So fatherless are 63% of youth suicides. The fatherless are 71% of school dropouts and youth pregnancies. The fatherless are 75% of youth in substance abuse programs. The fatherless are 85% of youth with behavior disorders. The fatherless are 85% of youth in juvenile prison. The fatherless are 90% of youth runaways and homeless youth. We're not done. Mass shooters. 98% of mass shooters are males. 26 out of 27 mass shooters were or are fatherless. Our fatherless situation in our country is a problem, and it's creating huge issues. And so that's why camp. Most of our boys are not with their biological father. Either they're with a single mom, or they're adopted into a new family. So wilderness therapeutic camps can be a part of the solution. Job said, "I delivered the fatherless, and him that had no one to help him." So if you want to boil camp down to something really, really simple, we take boys, many of whom are fatherless, that are having issues in life. Those issues look different, but they're not good issues. And we put him with a young man, a godly young man, that has good attitudes about life. That's it in a nutshell. Now, it's way more complex than that, but that's it in a nutshell. These boys need a good role model. They need a man that has his act together in life to hang out with and to walk him through the process of learning how to navigate life. So, what is a therapeutic camp? Well, you have to have, this slide shows that there's about 8 of us in the U.S. You're probably familiar with the other camps. Our camp is in southeast Ohio. And we have 447 acres of beautiful land, ponds, creeks, things that boys like. So you need a space. You need a place to have a wilderness camp. And then you need some godly young men. Our discoverer chiefs, our woodsman chiefs, and our explorer chiefs. 3 groups right now. So we have some godly young men, and we have some supervisors. We've got 5 supervisors to help our 6 chiefs. And then you need boys. So this is probably kind of hard to see. This is a picture from last Wednesday. Turkey in the Hole is tomorrow night. That's our Thanksgiving celebration. Tomorrow night, we're going to about midnight start this fire and make a lot of coals, and then tomorrow morning, early in the morning, we'll put a bunch of turkeys all wrapped up in foil and with butter and herbs and all kind of things, and stick them down under those coals and let them cook for about 7 hours, 7 to 8 hours. And about 4 o'clock, we'll have, on Tuesday, we'll have our party night, our send-off for the boys as they go home for the Thanksgiving holiday. And so we're doing something a little different this year. You dig a trench about 4 feet wide, and however long, depending on how many turkeys you put in there, and then you put some logs on top, some green logs, and you build your fire on top of that. And eventually, once you get a lot of coals, those green logs burn through, and all your coals drop down into the trench, and you're ready to stick your turkeys in. Well, we built a big turkey, and we made it out of firewood, put it right on top of those logs. So you can see its tail, and there's its head, and we even gave it a big beard, a great big long beard. So that's what we did last Wednesday as a camp. We stacked all that wood and got ready for our turkey in the hole coming up tomorrow night. So boys, you need a bunch of boys. We've got 28 boys at camp right now. There's all kinds of problems. Some of them are sullen. They won't talk to you. Some of them like to run away when they get in trouble. Some of them just like to yell and scream. Some of them like to hit and kick. And whatever else they can do. We've got boys that don't know how to solve problems very well and like to get their own way. Okay, so we've got property, we've got young men, and now we've got boys. Suppose we ought to have some rules for this place. We've got 2 rules. We do everything together as a group, and we do it with a good attitude. Those are the only 2 rules we have in camp. So what would your family look like if you did everything together and everybody kept a good attitude? Would that work at home? How about school? If everybody worked together at school and everybody kept a good attitude, would that work? How about your workplace? If everybody worked together as a team, and everybody kept a good attitude, could you get something done? Probably. How about church? If everybody works together and has a good attitude, can the church move forward? Pretty simple. Hey,
Do you want this?
we have new technology.
All right.
So those are the 2 rules that we have at camp. Do everything together as a group and do it with a good attitude. Good job. I'll run through this again real quick just so you get some pictures. Okay. Thank you.
Sir.
Maybe you recognize these guys from somewhere. All right, now you can see the turkey. Okay, so these boys need some things in their lives that they've missed out on. One of those things is structure. And the way we build structure in boys is what we call the ABCs of camp. So A is a clean camper. A lot of our guys don't have good personal hygiene. Mom can't get them to change their clothes, can't get them to brush their teeth, fight to get a shower. You know, when you don't feel very good about yourself, you don't take care of yourself very well. And that's the experience of these boys often when they come to camp. So we're going to shower every day. We're going to put clean clothes on every day. We're going to brush our teeth after every meal. That's 3 times a day. So we're just going to learn how to take care of ourselves a little bit. A clean camp tent. So the boys design, build, and maintain their own tent structures. And we're going to learn how to keep them clean. So when we get up in the morning, we're going to get ourselves dressed and we're going to make our beds the camp way. And we're going to sweep things out and check our footlocker, make sure it's okay. Line up our shoes from the tallest to the smallest under our bed and get our tent looking really clean. And before we go to start working on our campsite, we'll go out the logs and Chief will have devotions with us. Something from the Bible, something from yesterday that has a spiritual principle in it. Chief will get us started out thinking a little bit about pleasing the Lord and doing things His way. And then we'll break up into our pairs and we'll clean lantern globes, we'll rake our tents out, and we'll get our campsite looking tip-top. And so when boys are ready to go up to the dining hall, what they're leaving behind them is clean, orderly. It's done right. If someone would show up for a tour in their campsite, they'd be okay. And it never fails that when a group is not functioning well, when things aren't going smoothly for them, they're not making it to meals on time, you can go down to their campsite and you can probably find a mess. They somehow just go together. Order for these guys is not something that comes natural. And so as they get this structure in their lives, it comes out in their behaviors as well. Routine. A lot of our guys come from homes where there's not a lot of schedule. There's not a lot of good routine, especially single mom, all right? So she's trying to hold down a job so she can pay the bills and buy food. She's trying to get the children up and ready for school and get them out the door, get their homework done at night. And then there's all the cleaning and laundry and dishes and all the normal things, right? So this is hard, to say the least. And so oftentimes there's not a lot of regular routine in their lives. So 5 days a week, we're going to come up to the chuck wagon as part of our routine after we've gotten done with our campsite chores. And we're going to set tables. Means we're going to clean the table, we're going to set out the place settings, and we're going to get ready to go up and get the food for our group. After our tables are all set, then supervisor will meet the guys at the door, shake their hand, welcome them into the meal, and once we all get inside, we'll have prayer, and then we'll enjoy the meal. Just the idea of sitting down together is something that a lot of our campers don't really have on a regular basis. I've been in homes where if there was a kitchen table, it was completely covered because that's not where they ate. There was a little bit of space by the microwave so you could do your little bit of preparation and then get it out of the microwave and you carry it out and sit down in front of the big screen and that's where you eat. And so you eat whenever you can, people kind of coming and going. The idea of sitting down as a group and enjoying a meal together, enjoying one another's fellowship is not real common. After our meal, we'll have our sharing time. Boys get to listen to stories. They get to share what happened to them that day or what happened to them the night before, what they're going to be doing that afternoon. Sometimes we read articles that the boys have written, normally have some kind of an educational theme that the boys can enjoy. And so we have a sharing time and talk about what our plans are as we look into the future and what our experiences have been recently. And so to have a dining hall, you have to have cooks, right? And here are the favorite people of all camp, the cooks. Whenever a boy graduates, he can forget to thank whoever, but he never forgets to thank the cooks. Boys like to eat, right? Is that right, ladies? Whatever the age, we don't have any snacks at camp. Most of our boys are in their growth spurt. We're living and working outdoors, even in the cold weather like this. And we're a boys' camp. Those are 4 good reasons why you need a great kitchen and great cooks. So we appreciate the food that comes out. 2 days a week, the boys make their own menus. And so they cook their menus down at campsite. They've got to have all the 5 food groups. They've got to keep it under budget. So they have a certain amount per person. And so they figure out all their ingredients for their various pieces of the menu and figure out how much each piece costs by ingredient and add it all up and then divide it by the number of boys. And we come up with our budget. And okay, so Chief, I'm way over budget. What do I do? Well, I don't think we need high C and chocolate milk and regular milk and grape juice for breakfast. I think we cut some of that out somewhere. Okay. So they learn how to be a little bit flexible that way as well. Something else that fits into their routine, besides chuck wagon every day, Wednesday and Thursday, their campsite meals, is chapel on Sunday morning and Vespers Wednesday night. Chapel is usually run by one of the supervisors or program director. Vespers is often run by a group. And so the group will be picking and leading the songs and having the Bible lesson as they come up with it as a group. Tuesday afternoon is an important time. It's Plans Day. It's when we're going to make our plans for the next Friday through Thursday. So the boys set their own schedules. They decide what they're going to do. And they live in their campsite. They know if they have enough cooking wood, if they have enough shavings, if there's something that's broken that needs fixed. And the plans have to be approved by a supervisor, but they learn what a balanced day is. A little bit of education in there, a game somewhere, some fun, and we're looking for a good balanced day. There was a group one time that put on plans to play nothing but games for 3 days. I'm not sure how that got past the chief. I bet the chief figured the supervisor would squash it and he wouldn't have to be the bad guy. Well, the supervisor saw it and he said, sure, you can play games for 3 days. And so they started out. This is a high old time. We're going to have a party. And so they played games all morning long. And in the afternoon, they played games all day long. And by that night, some of the guys that had been around longer, Chief, can we cut some firewood or something? Nope, got to stick with our plans, So they played board games that night. Next day, it's games again. By noon, most of them were getting tired of playing games. And there was more fussing. And people weren't getting along too well with each other. And they just weren't feeling real good as a group. And I think before that day was over, supervisor came down and said, okay. Did you learn anything? Yeah. It's not fun just playing and having goof off time all the time. Feel good about yourself, you need to get some work done. You need to get something accomplished. So, Plans Day is a good time to learn lots of things. So we'll have what we call our MAEs, our morning, afternoon, evening, so kind of an outline of our day, and each boy will take a day, and he'll write a written narrative. Chief came in and got us up at 6:30. We all hopped out of bed and got ourselves dressed and cleaned our tents lickety-split and tip-top shape. And they just write out the whole day. Now, when a boy first comes to camp, it sounds a little bit like then we. But by the time a guy has been at camp a while, he's getting pretty good at writing these plans. And some of them are so good, we have them read them in chuck wagon. We can work on punctuation, capitalization, sentence structure, paragraph formation. There's all kinds of things we can do with plans. You won't see a classroom anywhere in these pictures because we're going to weave class into everything we do without the boys realizing that they're actually getting an education. I mean, yeah, Mom says you can't even read your writing, so let's work on our penmanship a little bit, right? So lots of things we can do just in the normal course of the day. But plans is an important thing on Tuesday afternoon. All right, so another piece of our routine, which is going to lead into another principle. So we have structure, we have routine, and we are regularly going to sit down at logs. Okay, a little U-shaped set of logs where you can sit and look at each other and hear each other, and we're going to do something there. We're going to evaluate. Okay, so hey, we just played a game and it went pretty well. How do you think it went, guys? Oh, Chief, that was great. The last time we played this game, we got into a big fight and fuss and missed supper, and this was much better. Oh, I didn't remember that. Good job, Billy. So what did we do different? Why was it better? Well, we just listened to Chief. We followed Chief, and if somebody tagged somebody else, they just, okay, I'm caught, whatever. Didn't make a big deal about it. All right, so that's a good lesson to learn. So we're going to try to remember that for the next time, right? Okay, so guys, what are we going to do? Where are we going next? Oh, we're going to go up to lunch. Okay, so yeah, how do you want to do that? Well, we don't want to do it like we did breakfast this morning because we missed breakfast. Oh, okay, let's talk about what happened this morning. So at logs, we're going to evaluate what we've done. We are going to plan out what we're going to do next. It's already on our plans, but how are we going to do that? What kind of attitudes are we going to have? How are we going to fix what went wrong last time? And then we're actually going to go do what we said we were going to do. Okay? So that's our plan, do, and evaluate. And when it comes to evaluating, we're evaluating all the time. And each boy who comes has a set of goals. So there's the discoverer's goals. So I got one of the explorers close up. Okay, so when a boy comes to camp, he gets goals for himself. Right? We tell Mom to be quiet. We don't want your goals. We want his goals. You're not working on them. He's working on them. So, and our boys know what their problems are, right? They've been told many, many times what they need to change. So Landon wants to learn to be more responsible. I want to learn to give people's things back right away. Oh, what's that tell you? He probably takes stuff. I want to learn to stay focused in writing assignments, okay? Something that's missing here that's often on the boys is something about respect for authority, listening, doing right away what's being asked. That's very common. Or respecting other people, his peers, being kind. So whatever his goals are, he's going to work on these goals. And we're going to have a formal evaluation every 90 days. But every day, we're going to talk about his goals, because these are the things that gets him into trouble. And sooner or later, something goes south, and we have a problem. So there's only one good thing to do with problems, and that is solve them. So we're going to identify the problem. We're going to come up with some solutions to that problem and then choose one of them. And then we're going to plan how we're going to prevent this from happening again in the future. So we're going to stand in a circle, stop what we're doing. When the problem comes up, stand in a circle and go through these steps. How long do you suppose that takes? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Half hour? Hour? 2 hours? Could you actually make this last 3 hours? The answer to that is yes. It's amazing how long you can hang on to your problem. Anybody ever hung on to a problem before? Oh, let's make this easier. Does anybody know somebody else that hung on to a problem for a long time? Yeah, okay. But this is what we do at camp. This is why we don't milk cows at camp. So you're in the middle of milking the cows, and you have a problem. And you stand in a circle, and someone says, I'm not going to solve my problem. So what do? Do you ignore the cows? It's getting messier in here all the time, right? Or do you go take care of the problem? So at camp, we don't allow the structure of camp to work against making problem solving number one priority. We're going to stop whatever we're doing, and we're going to solve problems. We're not going to wait until 2 o'clock next Thursday when we see the therapist, because all the therapists are right here. It's all my buddies that watched me do it for the 10th time. Today, they're my therapists. They're going to help me work through this. So this is something that we do every day at camp, in every group. Problems can take just 30 seconds. You bump somebody. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my bad. I wasn't paying attention. Let me help you pick that up. Did I break anything? I'll fix it if I did. Doesn't need to take long. Doesn't even need to take a circle up. But that's not where our guys are coming from, right? So we're going to circle up and learn how to do that well. So when does this happen? This happens when we're building tents, chopping wood, making shavings, when we're carrying wood. This happens any time of the day, any place. We're just going to live life, and when problems come up, we'll work at solving them. Even when we're playing, sledding, playing games as a big group. This looks like a fall harvest festival. We're going to split some wood and make some apple cider. When we're learning things, up there in the upper left is our trading post. So our boys get an allowance, $5 a week, and they have to buy their own soap and shampoo and toothpaste and that kind of thing. But if they have some money left over, they can buy the fishing lure that's catching all the fish right now. This time of year, craft wood is pretty popular. So wood that's already been cut into a blank for a spoon or a chain of hearts or a ball and cage or a canoe. They like to buy those and carving tools as well. We also take trips away from camp, whether they're hiking trips or canoeing trips. Sometimes we take educational trips as well, just studying a particular topic and going from place to place where we can learn. But trips do amazing things because they're away from camp, they're away from the forced structure. Like if you don't show up at breakfast on time, you get an alternative meal that's not near as nice. But when you're out on a trip, you're out on a trip. There's nobody there to watch it. There's nobody there to know what time you got up in the morning. Well, except yourself, right? And so it's a good time to see how much of the structure and routine is actually stuck and whether they'll continue to repeat it, continue to live that lifestyle. It tells us about the progress that they're making. And so eventually there is progress enough that it's time to go home. Whenever the group, the staff, and the parents, and the boy, that's 4 people, 4 sets of people, think that the boy can go home and be successful, it's time to graduate. Doesn't need to be there any longer than absolutely necessary. And that varies, of course, from family to boy to community. Where's he going back to? Is he going back to the same school and community that he came from? Is the same old gang going to be there ready to meet him? Is he ready to bear that? So there's lots of factors involved in when it's time for graduation. So we have some maintenance guys that keep all our vehicles and equipment running. And we have a couple of ladies in the office, the business secretary, the receptionist. We call her the receptionist. She's actually more like the program secretary that does a lot of the paperwork for the boys. We are licensed by the state as a therapeutic wilderness camp, so there's lots of paperwork there to do. We have family workers that work with the families while the boys are at camp. And now I'm going to shift into a little bit of what's coming or what we have been doing. So pay attention to Davey and Hannah there on the right. So the plan is here that I, as camp director, I'm going to move to executive director. I don't even know what that is yet. You know what that is, Eugene? Not yet. Anyway, I'm going to be one of them. And Davey's going to move into the director position. If you haven't figured it out, these boys that come to camp, they've got incredible amounts of energy. And it takes young men, our chiefs, our supervisors, that have lots of energy to be able to run ahead of them. And so I don't have as much energy as I used to. So yeah, Davey's going to come in and provide some of that energy. Chief Nate there is our program director. That'll continue. But we're looking forward to that transition. Here's our board of directors. Let's see, okay, so Wayne Kime is not in that picture. Yeah, Norman's in the background. So Wayne and Norman are the only three original board people from 2009. So there's been changeover with our board of directors. There's our PAC. You recognize a couple people in there. And so what else has been happening at camp? All right, so here's a picture of our camp property. So a little triangle piece up there on top. We bought that about 3 years ago. We had wanted to buy that in the beginning, but we didn't really have the money. And it wasn't really part of our core camp property, kind of laying up there by itself. Well, when we begin to think about starting the fourth group, we've got our 3 groups in the upper right block of the main piece there. And so our third group is kind of just at the bottom of that triangle property. And right now they go down to the left in that clear area when they have problems. When we have problems, we don't like to stay in campsite. If we're going to yell and scream at each other, let's go someplace else and not have that bad feeling here in campsite. So they go down there. Well, if we start our fourth group, where are they going to go? Doesn't work too well. No place for them to go. And so we approached the landowner for that 42 acres up there again, and yes, he was willing to sell that to us, and so we bought that. So we feel like we've got room for boys more to move around, especially when they're having problems and they're needing some space. So that's exciting. Let me go ahead and point out that we have 2 creek systems coming into camp. We have one that you see coming in from the right, and then one that's coming from the top. That triangle piece there is kind of cuts through a pond. We used to own a third of that pond. Now we own the whole pond. All right, so that's another creek system. So both of those creek systems have a couple of valleys that feed them. And so we're trying to do more in the way of property management. And so that 42 acres up there on top, we had no way to get to it. Difficult to see the topography of this, but there was no, you could get a 4-wheeler up that hill, but as far as getting a tractor and a wagon loaded with wood and boys, no, that wasn't happening. So we created a dam across the lower part of that pond and made ourselves an access over to that 42 acres. So that's pretty big for us because all these tents that the boys make, that takes a lot of wood. And it takes a lot of wood to keep all the fires going all winter long and staying warm. So we've got to manage this acreage to meet the needs of the boys. So in building that dam, it raised the level of this pond probably 6 feet. So it made a significant difference in that pond. It's going to be much nicer. This pond and the one we'll talk about next are actually kind of filters for those creek systems that come down from those valleys. So we have to kind of manage them that they don't just fill up. Okay, this is the other side. This is the one that was on the right there. Again, a filter pond. So it was filling up. When we first got there in 2009, I think 23¼ inch bass was taken out of this pond. That's where all the big bass were in this pond. Well, over the years, it just kept silting in, and there wasn't much there anymore. So, had some dozers, a couple of big hoes, opened that thing up and put a little land bridge with an actual bridge there in the middle so we can get to it from around the sides and clean it out as it filters out in future years. So that was a real nice addition there, that bridge, and a lot better fishing there. And it keeps our big pond cleaner, and our big pond would be about impossible to dredge out. Okay, so this year, the 2 big projects that we've had this year is building 2 houses. So this is a staff house up on top of the hill, closer to the boys, where our educational director is going to be living, Melvin and Emma Lambert. They just moved in yesterday, so that's exciting. And this is a new chief's lodge. So our 6 chiefs live in what used to be a hog barn. All right, it's block structure, and yeah, it's been refurbished and all. It looks like a house, but there's 2 bedrooms upstairs, so there's 2 guys in each bedroom, and the 3rd bedroom is the hallway. So when we think about going to the 4th group and adding 2 more chiefs, it looks almost impossible in that house. So we built a chief's house that will accommodate all of our chiefs when we have 4 groups, and even some extra space for work groups in the basement and chiefs in training. So those are big projects. This one's not quite complete. We're hoping to move in over the Christmas holiday. So what's ahead? Camper number 200. We're right now on camper, I think it's about 187. So we're excited that the Lord has blessed us with boys and families to serve. Another staff house next year, and then our thrift store in Marietta wants to build a bigger facility for processing. They don't really have much space for that, and they're doing an amazing job down there with supporting camp. And then we also have a woodworking facility, a kind of a multi-purpose building up on top of the hill, and eventually an office to build there at camp as well. So what can you do if you would like to help and you're already helping? Is there anybody here that was on the youth group that came down and helped with a work project? Yay, all right, thank you. All right, so appreciate your financial support, appreciate your work. So pray for us as we try to guide boys with truth and love to making better choices on a consistent basis, and for parents to be willing to change as well as their boys learn new ways. And for safety, a lot of energy running around camp and lots of opportunities for something to not go the way you wanted it to. So if you know somebody at camp staff, send cards, send packages. They don't get to pull out their phone every night and check up on everybody, right? They're back there in the woods. There's no cell service to speak of. We make them leave their cell phones at the office anyway when they go back to be with the boys. So cards, letters, yeah, something like that is very, very welcome and very much appreciated for our camp staff. Of course, we have kind of a regular turnover of staff, certainly in some of the positions. So yeah, apply for a term of service. You already brought a work group. Something else you can do is do a fundraiser for camp. I don't know what kind of fundraiser your community likes, if they like to eat pizza, or if they like to have their cars washed, or if they like to have a slave auction, yeah, whatever works. So just kind of leave it up to you, but that's something else you could do for camp sometime. And of course, your support helps us help low-income families be able to send their boys. So there's a picture of our Mount Hope trading post, your donations. There's the Marietta thrift store. And taking a group down to help. You're a little bit far away, especially from the Marietta one. But yes, if you know of folks down that way, they always appreciate volunteers. Okay? Any questions? Yes? Okay, so each stay is individual, so there is no set time. Our average stay at camp is 18 months. So most of our boys have been through local counseling. They've done things in their own home area that haven't worked. And so a lot of the guys we get, you can't tell them what to do. They can't read what to do. They have to learn by actually doing it. So we're an experiential program. They experience it enough times that it becomes part of who they are. So it's a little longer than a lot of programs are, but that's why, because the others, for whatever reason, haven't made a change. Good question. We've had boys graduate as early as 10 months. Once a boy has been there about 2 years, we figure we've probably done all that we can do. Maybe it's time for something different. Once he's been through the year's routine a couple times, there's no more surprises. Nothing really to look forward to that he hasn't already done. So that's kind of the cap, 2 years, give or take. Anybody else?
Are you in the process of starting the fourth group, or
Okay, so we had decided that we're going to start the fourth group in 23. We have another supervisor leaving, so that would give us 3 supervisors with less than a year of experience. We have a new family worker coming to replace Davey, so he can become director. So we'll have a new family worker. So we're beginning to scratch our heads a little bit. Is this really wise? Or should we give ourselves another year? You generally want to start a group May, June, July, because they have to build some tents. Like, we don't want to build all their tents for them, because then they have no ownership. So you have to build tents, you have to lay in enough firewood to get yourself through the winter. And so it's pretty hard to start in the fall. So to answer your question, I don't know. There's a part of us that would really like to start one this year, but just wondering about the wisdom of it. Mm-hmm.
So you talked about the 2-year cap. You don't factor in things that you're trying to teach, say, an 8-year-old that he really can't grasp or get a hold of, that he might at 15 or 16. Can you talk a little bit about what age
Yes.
you're targeting?
Good question. So age ranges. We can take boys from 9 to 15. A 9-year-old, we have to have a letter from some kind of a behavioral specialist that recommends a residential placement. Take them out of the home, send him to camp. Okay, that can't happen with just the parents saying, I want him to go, a 9-year-old. So that's a state requirement that someone else has to weigh in on this decision. Because yes, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, part of the reason it takes them longer is because just that separation from home is harder, and it takes them longer to get over that before they really embrace camp. Another thing has to do with what are they dealing with. So our fetal alcohol syndrome boys often take longer than what our camp program is really designed for. That's just the nature of their injury from mom drinking while she was pregnant. So yeah, there are different factors. We're going to put them in a group that's similar age, size, maturity. Right? So some boys can be old but very immature. Some boys can be young but very big. And so that's happened several times to us, that a boy comes in and the family worker says, wow, I haven't seen him for a few months. He sure grew. And so he's towering over all these other little boys, and little boys say, oh, we don't want him in our group. You know, is he going to be mean? Is he going to hit us? Whatever. And so we end up bumping him into a group that is a little older than what we like, but it fits his size. We don't want the other boys to feel intimidated from this guy. He may or may not be physical when he has his emotional problems, but yeah, those things all have to kind of fit. You also have guys that are way street smarter than his group needs to have. Yeah, lots of factors, but it's a good question. We have to somehow get them into the right group. The fourth group will give us a little more latitude. We've got a young group, we've got an old group, and a middle group. Well, we'll probably have 2 middle groups that will give us a little more latitude in, who goes where. Yes?
Is there any interest, or has there been interest, or have you experimented with teaching the boys certain skills, like speaking skills, to be able to explain something, or to speak clearly and improve their speaking or singing skills? Is there interest in that? Would there be interest in that?
Yes and yes, it happens. So speaking, most of our boys, I would say 90% of our boys, when they come to camp, they are not good speakers. They're not good listeners either. And so when we have problems and we stand in our circle, we're going to practice listening. You know, what did this guy say? What did he say is a problem? What did this guy say is the solution? And then probably the hardest thing we have is not so much the speaking, although that is something that develops as we spend a lot of time in this development of communication, is the expression of feelings. Okay? So am I right, ladies? Guys have a hard time expressing what's going on inside, often, a little more than ladies do anyway. So that's a big challenge because most of our boys have experienced various kinds of trauma. And there are all kinds of feelings that have been pushed down and buried in there that they need to be able to express and get out. And so that's a harder one. To get a boy to the place where he'll actually write letters home to mom and tell her more than we fished, we cut wood. You know what I'm saying, moms? Like, yeah, what happened to you this week? You know, did you get along with your friends? Did anybody care for you? So yes, that whole thing of communication is huge at camp. So one of our supervisors there, Justin Miller, he was camper number 3. This is pretty unusual. So he was camper and he graduated. He came back and was a chief and graduated. And then we brought him back as a supervisor. And he is an incredible one-on-one communicator, relationship builder. But the first day that he was at camp, sitting in the office, this is how he answered my questions. Between then and now, the transformation has been incredible. Singing, it's interesting, the guy that really developed the camping, the Lock Miller model, Buford McKenzie, which was the first supervisor, his degree in college was in music, had an amazing voice. And camp is full, let me say this differently, camp done well is full of song and music. And so, yes, we sing songs every day at Chuckwagon, many songs. Now, do we try to teach them parts and that kind of thing? We've had a couple groups, oftentimes the older guys that have enough good voices in there, they actually develop that a little bit. We do that as staff, but teaching them parts is not something that we do, but we do a lot of singing. It is a happy day when you hear a group walking up the trail to breakfast, singing. What did I say the 2 rules of camp are? We do everything together as a group, and we do it with good attitude. What are you doing when you're singing? You're doing it together. When's the last time you sang with a bad attitude? Okay? So, I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but we do, a lot of communicating and a fair amount of singing. Somebody else had a question. Yes.
Do you have any contact with the boys after they leave the program?
Well, yesterday morning I was going out to do my chores, and right there, about this far from my head, an old camper was knocking on my door. He'd gone over to camp, and he was an older camper. He was in the little guy group, and there was nobody there anymore that kind of knew who he was. Oh, go to Chief Joe's house. So he came over to my house, and here's this old camper, and he's doing okay. He's not in jail. I like that piece of it. He's not getting along with his mom real well. That's not great, but I also understand that. So yes, they'll come back by. They'll call the Red Bud race that we have in the spring is often a time when we'll see guys come back calling. So like in this day and age, when you've got these phones, chiefs, after they graduate, they've still got all their boys that they're connecting to. So more so than in the past, I think, just because of the technology. Anybody else? Yes.
Camp life, I see a lot of need for knives and that type of thing. I'm just wondering what the policy is
Policy on
knives with the boys. I see they have a lot of need.
multi-tools. Yes. Okay, so in order to have a knife, you have to earn your group's trust. Okay, so you can save for a knife all you want there at Trading Post. But you're not allowed to buy one. Well, you could probably buy one, but you'd have to put it in the storage until your entire group says, yes, we feel he's a responsible enough person to have a knife. We feel safe. Now, you can lose that too, right? You can be irresponsible, do something that's foolish, and the group can say, we don't want him carrying a knife. So, yeah, they'll have to give it to the chief. So, a lot of things happen in the group like that. Good question. Now, that doesn't mean he can take it home. We often will have a boy who has his group's trust and is doing well, but there is no way his mom wants him carrying a knife at home over home visits. Hey, we're going to respect mom. That's just an area we're going to have to earn, isn't it? Yeah.
Tell them at camp, they also whittle knives, they make things.
They're constantly whittling and cutting lashings for making their tarps stick onto their, yeah, there's a lot of uses for a knife at camp. Now, you take somebody out of camp, you put them in a typical public school, not too many uses for a knife in a public school. I get it why they don't let, I carried a knife the whole time I was in public school. I was in Boy Scouts, and it was not a deal. But today, yeah, I understand that. But at camp, yeah, we're a little different. The boys do have to turn their knives in at night, so they give them to Chief, and they go to Chief's tent. They're not allowed to have watches with alarms, so they can wake themselves up in the middle of the night to do something silly. So yeah, we have some extra little protocols there to keep everybody safe.
You have people with anger problems, ever using axes or anything like that?
I don't know that we have ever had a camper go after somebody with an axe. Well, they get mad and they throw, but they'd throw a rake or a shovel or whatever's in their hand. It's an emotional release that had no impulse control. We do lock all our sharps up when they're not being used, and obviously overnight. So any axes, draw knives, bow saws, whatever we have a tool chest that those things normally stay in it, unless they're actually being used and being supervised. Yes?
Do you have a library?
Yes, there was a picture there. I didn't talk too much about it, but we have a really nice library. About all the material in the library was cut off of our property, and we had a former supervisor, or supervisor as he was ending up, make us a full scribe log cabin for a library. It's really nice.
Speaking of your anger, the question on anger, how do you deal with that?
Okay, so anger can take many forms. It can be yelling and shouting and screaming, which isn't nice, but it's not harmful to anybody else. When we start getting into the physical aspects of anger, you can have throwing things, which may or may not be dangerous, can be. But when we start having anger that's actually going after somebody, I am mad at you. You are my problem, and I'm going to get rid of it. All the direct care staff are trained in passive restraint. So it's how to hold a boy safely until he can calm down. We don't really take what I would call juvenile delinquents. That's a boy who sits around for 3 days and cooks up a plan to get somebody or get back at somebody, maybe even get someone to help him, and then executes the plan. If it doesn't succeed, then all right, I'll try again next week. And he starts on his new plan. That's a juvenile delinquent. What we have mostly, I refer to as emotionally disturbed boys. They have no impulse control. They're mad right now, and so we're going to blow up. That's the anger part of it. They can also shut down the same way and just not talk. So no impulse control, just an emotional release that isn't lived out in an appropriate way or a behaviorally proper way.
So how do you control that then? If that's how you control their anger.
Well, what we control is the physical expression of that anger. We are going to hold them in a passive restraint. So we're trained to hold them, various kinds of holds, so they can't hurt somebody else until they calm down. And once they calm down, they're usually pretty upset at themselves. That was stupid. And my mom's going to be mad at me. It's not the same as a juvenile delinquent, which says, well, this didn't work. I'll try something different next time. Yeah. Our program is not designed for a juvenile delinquent.
Maybe I'm changing the subject.
Yes.
Do you make an effort to teach them skills? Like just normal skills, working skills, to do certain things?
Okay, so they are going to provide all of their own firewood. So they're going to learn to cut. We usually cut the tree down. They'll go to it, they'll cut it up in chunks, they'll put it in the trailer, haul it to camp, unload it, and then they'll put it in the cross bucks, and 2 guys on either side of a cross cut, okay? First thing we're going to learn there is cooperation, right? Ever run a cross cut with somebody? You have to cooperate. And then we're going to split it, stack it, and so there's lots of opportunities to learn work ethic is kind of what we refer to it as, how to work hard. And we don't have real long work schedules. It's not like we're working 4 hours and take a half-hour break for lunch and work another 4 hours. But we might work for an hour, hour and a half, and most of our boys, when they come to camp, they are not workers. They want to get by with as little as they can get by with. And so it's a process to help them realize that, you can feel good about yourself. If you put in some good work and you see the pile of firewood that you managed to split, pile up, and you're going to use that to heat your own tent this winter. Most of them learn, they may not be great workers when they leave, but they'll about always be better workers when they leave. So if you're in the oldest group, you're a half mile away from chuck wagon. So that means you're going to walk half a mile to go get your food and a half mile to go back. And then at lunchtime, all right, so you're putting in 3 miles just to get your food. So camp is a great place to shed some extra weight and to muscle up. No snacks.
Joe, tell them how they are skilled to design their own tent.
Mm-hmm.
And the measurements, and they actually design their own tents. That's a skill that they learn.
Okay.
Talk about that a little bit.
So what Gene's sharing is that the tents that you saw, I don't know how far back I'd have to go to get to a tent. Oops. Okay, so there's about 8 to 10 tents in every campsite. And the boys design the tent. So they've got to draw it out on graph paper to scale. And then from that, they will create a materials list. Here's what we need: posts, beams, rails, side rails, rafters are smaller. They've got to lay this thing out and come up with a materials list. They go to the woods and they get the materials that they need. They bring that in. They'll skin all the bark off. And we skin the bark off because what loves to live under dying bark? We don't want them in our tent. We don't want all the insects in our tent. Looks prettier. If it's a post, that bark is going to rot first and that post is going to wiggle sooner than it would otherwise. But what do we choose? We often choose pine for our posts. Is that a great wood to put in the ground? Well, at camp it's a great wood because it's going to rot in about 4 or 5 years. And we're going to need to build another tent. So every boy in his year and a half is going to help design and build and maintain several tents. He's going to learn how to make notches. Because we don't use nails except for our sleep tents and the floor, we're going to notch and peg everything. So he's going to learn how to design and build it, and he's going to learn that by doing. So there's that set of skills. I don't know if you have other skills in mind. I mean, that's kind of the carpentry end of things.
Cooking skills. Cooking skills.
Cooking skills, they're going to do that.
They wanna cook.
And it's, when a boy first comes to camp, for his menu is probably mac and cheese. Guess what he had at home a lot? mac and cheese. It's easy. By the time he leaves camp, he's probably a pretty decent cook. He knows how to use spices. You know, he has kind of his favorite menus. He kind of has his foods that he does really well, that his group really likes and begs him to make when it's his turn to cook. So, yeah, some cooking skills. When a boy leaves camp, we will give him credit. Often, this is depending on the age, this would be the older group, you know, several high school credits for different things that he's done. Definitely gets a credit for phys ed. There's way more phys ed at camp than there is at any school. Health, you know, 24/7. We're going to shower, we're going to take care of our cuts and our wounds and, you know, whatever. We're going to learn about health. We're going to learn about the body. And these guys are at the age where, yeah, they're wondering, they're asking questions. So we, as a private school registered with the state, we can assign high school credits in certain areas. It's not going to be your Algebra 2 or anything like that, but he can get some credit that he's not behind when he gets back to his school. Did you have any other skills in mind, particularly? Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you for coming. Thank you for helping. Thank you for supporting. Thank you that no fights broke out with two churches in the same church. I'll turn the time back over to Eugene. Get back up to the top.
One thing that Joe forgot, and that is this young camper that came to camp and answered like this. He also found a wife at camp. He married our family worker's daughter. So he's beginning a godly home. And he came to camp totally.
He married my daughter.
Yeah, I thought Amos, okay, your daughter, okay. Isn't that amazing? He came to camp, changed his life, married his daughter, and now he's successful and a great dad, I guess. But not a father yet, but planning to be. Okay, very good. All right, time for an offering. Are the ushers here? Okay, we'll take an offering at this point, and maybe I'll just ask Tony to lead us in a song. Yeah. Make a check out to our church, okay? And put down in the memo OWBC, okay, for High Boys Camp, all right? You want to write a check. Okay? Tony?
Christian Hymnary number 601. Christian Hymnary number 601.
Thy goodness see.
Okay, thank you for your offering. Just to add to what Joe said, the boys' education at the camp is really, really thorough and complete. They learn every day. They have their own checkbook. They buy with the checkbook at the trading post, and they keep interest adding up. And in fact, I took at the Bolio Boys Camp, a local superintendent of a school came to the camp. I gave him a tour of the camp and to how much the boys learned. He said, "I wish every boy could come to your camp. Every boy is that complete." And so it's an amazing place to learn and to have boys learn practical skills, survival skills, and communication skills. It's just amazing what God has done in this kind of work. And I think it's still correct. 85% of the boys are successful, right? As a whole, from these camps. The boys that leave. Is that correct, Joe? At least it used to be that way.
At our camp, just shy of 200 boys. I don't think there's ever been a parent, when the boy has gone home, that hasn't said, he's made a lot of improvement. So in one sense, it's 100%.
100%. Okay.
Now, in another sense, then you go back 2 months later, and how's it going? Which factors in the home situation.
Their environment.
So I think the figure is like 70% of the boys go home and do not get in trouble with the law. Or they expelled from school, something severe that you would say, okay, this is obviously a death. So yeah, about 70%. And even the boys that bad. We often hear from them 2 years later. They call back, they get a hold of their chief and say, yeah, I had some hard times, but it's better.
A question,
Yeah.
you're kind of weeding out the worst psychopaths, but the delinquents and that kind of, is there any anabaptist solution for the worst level, or the higher levels?
Well, I would say that would probably be resolved in something like a Spring Haven, where it's residential, and they have like full-time counseling going on, so they're getting daily counseling. I'm not sure where a Fresh Start, that's more for adults, but like Two Boys Ranch is kind of the same model for younger members with a work study kind of split day. So it would take a higher, is it higher or lower ratio of as far as counselor to boy compared to what we have. Like we would, like an area that we can't deal with very well are boys who are sexual predators and maybe not even in a big sense, but we have 3 or 4 boys in a tent at night. We don't have separate bedrooms, so we can't handle those kinds of things. So that's just, the program comes from the 40s and 50s, and so they didn't have a lot of these things then, or at least we don't think they did. Maybe they just put it in institutions, I don't know, but it seems like our culture has more of that to deal with these days, and this program isn't really set up to do that. Is that a fair response, Mark? Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, any more questions? It's a tremendous work. Supporting it is very important, I feel. All right, thanks for coming. May you have a wonderful Thanksgiving week and enjoy your families. Let's stand for prayer, shall we? I'm going to ask Mark Wagner to come forward. He's including prayer. Mark?
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you again for the privilege that we've had to be together this evening, Father. And especially as we looked at the mission of helping boys, God, we just pray this evening for that work. God, that it would continue on and that these young men could be helped. I pray especially, Father, for Joe and for the staff. God, I pray may you give them wisdom and grace and strength. And Father, I pray for each one here this evening that is wanting to and willing to help. And I pray, God, that you might just continue to help us to support that work. Lord, that your work could go on and that you would be honored and glorified. I pray, God, that you might just be with us as we part this evening. May your protecting hand be upon us. And may we just continue to just have that concern for your work in whatever aspect that you would call us. So we ask this in your name. Amen.